The big news of this news cycle is about the 60 Minutes interview that was and the 60 Minutes interview that wasn't. Meaning, Vice President Kamala Harris did have her interview broadcast on CBS. Donald Trump ran away scared from his and decided not to do it at the last minute. And that led to an introduction of the 60 Minutes election special that, as Brandon Richards described it, you will not watch a worse opening for a politician than this from 60 Minutes. Absolutely savage takedown of Trump running from the media. And then we'll look at how Harris's went.
Ago, Trump backed out. The campaign offered shifting explanations. First, it complained that we would fact-check the interview. We fact-check every story. Later, Trump said he needed an apology for his interview in 2020. Trump claims correspondent Leslie Stahl said in that interview that Hunter Biden's controversial laptop came from Russia. She never said that. Trump has said his opponent doesn't do interviews because she can't handle them. He had previously declined another debate with Harris, so tonight may have been the largest audience for the candidates between now and Election Day. Our questions addressed the economy, immigration, reproductive rights, and the wars in the Middle East and Europe. Both campaigns understood this special would go ahead if either candidate backed out. And so, with that, here's Bill Whitaker.
Brutal. Shifting explanations, all of which were ridiculous. They don't want Trump to be fact-checked. Sorry, facts matter. A credible program like 60 Minutes is going to fact-check. I need an apology first because last time I did an interview with Leslie Stahl, you said that Hunter's laptop came from Russia. She never said that. Trump's misremembering or lying. And then, well, it's Kamala Harris who really doesn't want to do the interviews. You're the one backing out about the debate and the 60 Minutes interview. And then what I really want you to think about as we go through this is, number one, am I subscribed to the channel? You can click the subscribe button. But is how Trump would react if he were confronted with, as he has been in the past and has reacted poorly, as oppositional questions, as tough questions as Harris had to deal with. And those are the questions we're going to mainly focus on here. How would Trump react if he were pressed in the ways that she was rightfully, and I think she handled it perfectly fine, but Trump stormed out last time he was pressed during an interview. Here's the first moment.
Was democracy best served by President Biden stepping down and basically handing you a nomination? You didn't have to go through a primary process. You didn't have to fight off other contenders. That's not really the way our system was intended to work.
President Biden made a decision that I think history is going to show is rare among leaders, which was to put country before self. And I am proud to have earned the support of the vast majority of delegates and to have been elected the Democratic nominee. I am proud to have received the endorsement of leaders around this country from every background and walk of life to fight in this election over the next month for our democracy.
But I think this truncated process is why people think or say they don't really know who you are.
Look, I've been in this race for 70 days.
And then this clip stops there, but she continues on to make a point about that. So each one of these questions, or many of them, are repackaged, as often you do in such hard-hitting interviews, criticisms from the other side. That's what Trump has been saying, right? No, they're the threat to democracy because Biden dropped off the ticket and there was a coup when there wasn't. And I've expressed that it was within Biden's right to do that and within Harris's right to then win support of the delegates who really nominate the party's nominee. But That's a criticism we've heard from them quite a bit, and it was asked in this interview. This is just a quick pause from the serious stuff, sort of funny.
So what kind of gun do you own, and when and why did you get it?
I have a Glock.
Something about the delivery of that cracked us up at the office. I have a Glock.
I have a Glock, and I've had it for quite some time. And I mean, look, Bill, my background is in law enforcement, and so there you go.
There you go. Then back to the serious stuff, this time on Tim Walz.
In your debate with J.D. Vance, you said, I'm a knucklehead at times. And I think you were referring to the time that you said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square unrest when you were not.
Yeah.
Is that kind of misrepresentation, isn't that more than just being a knucklehead?
I think folks know who I am, and I think they know the difference between someone expressing emotion, telling a story, getting a date wrong rather than a pathological liar like Donald Trump.
But I think it comes down to the question of whether you can be trusted to tell the truth.
Yeah, well, I can. I think I can. I will own up to being a knucklehead at times, but the folks closest to me know that I keep.
All right, before going further, and again, just we don't have enough time to really dissect every moment from this 60 Minutes election special. I wish that we did. If there's extras, I might throw some on the bonus show. But you have to contrast this with how Trump reacts. If Trump got confronted with, how can people trust you? He would go, they can't trust you. You're fake news. They trust me. They don't trust you. I've never lied. And I do want to note, Tim Walz has misstated stuff for sure. Was this an attempt to mislead people? Or was it him getting confused himself about timeline or being fast and loose with the facts? Given each particular example, you could have different judgments for that. But I do want to make clear that can totally be called out and criticized, and he is owning up to those things. That is not anywhere in the world, in the universe, of the types of lies we see from Trump. Okay? The frequency and the magnitude of the lies. So even those being merged in the same conversation is ridiculous, but because Democrats so often are more willing to own up to their own mistakes than it seems someone like Trump would be, there he's doing just that. Last thing on that clip, Tim Walz, stop saying the knucklehead thing. That's too casual, and I'm just a goofy guy, and you're running to be vice president. So that word's a little too light for my my liking. I want people to understand, as we've seen in his role as governor, Tim Walz, even though, yes, he has that I'm an average Joe sort of vibe, he also is up to the position, like I said, as he's shown in his governance as governor of Minnesota. Then this. Actually, I'm going to start this one here.
It's seriously that I have to earn everyone's vote. This is an election for president of the United States. No one should be able to take for granted that they can just declare themselves a candidate and automatically receive support. You have to earn it. And that's what I intend to do.
Let me tell you what your critics and the columnists say.
Okay.
They say that the reason so many voters don't know you is that you have changed your position on so many things. You were against fracking, now you're for it. You supported looser immigration policies, now you're tightening them up. You were for Medicare for all, now you're not. So many that people don't truly know what you believe or what you stand for, and I know you've heard that.
In the last 4 years, I have been Vice President of the United States, and I have been traveling our country, and I have been listening to folks and seeking what is possible in terms of common ground. I believe in building consensus. We are a diverse people, geographically, regionally, in terms of where we are in our backgrounds. And what the American people do want is that we have leaders who can build consensus.
Again, spot on answer. Because it's just the reality that she's changed her positions on some things. Now, the frequency that's brought up, given the frequency that Trump's flip-flops are brought up, and that not seeming like it gets as much emphasis, That's weird. And we could do a whole separate discussion about the double standard in media and all that, because Democrats are constantly held to higher standards than Republicans. Just true, even in quote unquote liberal mainstream media. But that doesn't mean that I don't want Kamala Harris to be subjected to hard-hitting interviews. And here, she's being asked about those things. She has an answer which goes something like, maybe I am more liberal than a lot of people in the country, but I'm running to be president of the United States, the whole country. And so through the process of being in a national position of power, being vice president, I've been hearing people who want consensus. And so my policy agenda is one that can actually get done, can be implemented, and is in some cases compromises from what I personally would want to go as far as to do. That sort of transparency, I think, is perfectly acceptable. And a lot of people understand that. All right, when you were representing California, you were willing to go further than you're going to as the president of all of the states in this country. And that makes sense to me than this.
Ban the child tax credit.
Yes, I do.
You want to give tax breaks to first-time home buyers.
Yes.
And people starting small businesses.
Correct.
But it is estimated by the Nonpartisan Committee for Responsible Federal Budget that your economic plan would add $3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade. How are you going to pay for that?
Okay, so the other economists that have reviewed my plan versus my opponent and determined that my economic plan would strengthen America's economy, his would weaken it.
But
My plan, Bill, if you don't mind, my plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class, and you strengthen America's economy. Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy.
But pardon me, Madam Vice President, the question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes. It is not right that teachers and nurses and firefighters are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires and the biggest corporations. And I plan on making that fair.
But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
You know, when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about because their constituents know exactly what I'm talking about. Their constituents are those firefighters and teachers and nurses.
Yeah, so it's not, if she gets the House and Senate as Democratic, then a lot of this becomes possible. We saw Biden with his minimum corporate tax rate in the Inflation Reduction Act, if I'm not mistaken, being able to make progress on this. I don't doubt whenever he says, we're working in the real world, that feels a little bit, that phrasing I didn't love because it acted like she was saying something crazy. It's not crazy that we could adjust the tax system if she gets the House and Senate, which that if is a big one. I understand that. And she couldn't admit this. I'll admit it. If the Republicans have still the House or get the Senate, she's going to be hindered greatly in doing almost anything. So that's a huge part of this. Make sure you're also focusing on the House and Senate races because it's going to make a huge difference. But you see that it's a little hostile and she can handle it. And at certain moments, people said one of her reactions was flustered. Her points were completely clear. She's speaking about policy, answering for her policy positions in a way that Trump fails to over and over again. And for her, it's not personal. He's going to push her. He's going to say, this is about the real world. If he said that to Trump, Trump would lose his mind. He gets so upset. He stormed out of the last 60 Minutes interview. Any real journalist you sit down with, NABJ, for example, he just starts ranting about how the interviewer's so nasty and so terrible to me and you treated me so poorly. Harris is an adult, so she can handle interviews like this one that Trump literally could not sit down for. This question I felt was a little weird.
You have accused Donald Trump of using racist tropes when it comes to Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, when it comes to birtherism, when it comes to Charlottesville. In fact, you have called him a racist and divisive. Yet Donald Trump has the support of millions and millions of Americans. How do you explain that?
I'm glad you are pointing these comments out that he has made that have resulted in a response by most reasonable people to say it's just wrong. It's just wrong.
With so many people supporting Donald Trump, the man you've called a racist, how do you bridge that seemingly unbridgeable gap?
I believe that the people of America want a leader who's not trying to divide us and demean. I believe that the American people recognize that the true measure of the strength of a leader is not based on who you beat down, it's based on who you lift up.
So I'll get to the part of this interview that's just epic. And then I'll try to wrap it up. I know it's going on so long, but it's a little weird to go, you correctly called Trump out for things he said that, can we all just be adults? He said a lot of racist things. No, he's not talking about like that. Sure. Given that, how do you bridge the divide with his supporters? I also want to unify the country, but it's sort of like when Fox News goes, Biden said he was going to unite the country and then he failed. Because, but you, you were the ones trying to make sure he couldn't unite the country. What you talking about? So, not in the case of the interview here, but at some point, they're going to have to meet us halfway. I'm good trying to bridge some of these divides, but I need you to want to build your side of that bridge. Yeah. Because if I build the whole bridge, we're just going to keep on this. You ready? And then you come and you put dynamite all over it and explode it. Well, that was a waste of time. So I'd start with, let's not do the racism. That would be nice. Maybe don't say Vice President Harris turned black. That would be a start. And then I think it's partly the responsibility of Republicans who support Trump to do better. And we'll try to be sympathetic to those who choose to do better, right? We have, in the next clip, Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney and I, oh my gosh, we're miles away on most policies. But we, not personally, but our two political ideologies have bridged a divide in the interest of protecting our Constitution and democracy. So if you have some of those basic principles, you believe in America, you believe in our democracy, etc., and you have basic decency, but you're super different on most policies, we can totally unite. But if you're saying you'd prefer dictator Trump, as a Trump supporter told me, over democratically elected Kamala Harris, or that Kamala Harris isn't black is one of your beliefs, or I'm going to have a tough time uniting with that, to be honest. It's a big tent. It's not that big, though. It's not big enough for that. But most people, I think, could be a part of a united front. And speaking of Liz Cheney, here was a part of the 60-minute special.
4 years ago, if someone had told you that you would be campaigning with Liz Cheney, what would you have said to them?
That'd be great. That's really diplomatic.
Would you ever have thought that you'd be campaigning with Kamala Harris?
I hope that if you had said to me 4 years ago, our Constitution is going to be under threat and it's going to be crucial for the parties to come together and to support Vice President Harris because she'll defend the rule of law, I know I would have said that's exactly what I'll do.
Brilliant. Truly. So there's a lot more. Watch the full thing yourself. I think at least an edited version is on 60 Minutes YouTube channel if you want to watch it there or wherever you could get access to it, because it is valuable to dig in these things. And then the big devastating contrast for Trump is that he couldn't even do it. He's a scared little boy, couldn't go sit down and have a tough interview, because you saw some of these moments. They weren't rainbows, cotton candy, and puppies, right? There were some tough sort of issues, and there were more too. Asked about foreign conflicts and so many different things in the interview, and Trump just can't handle that. All he can do is on Fox News repeat, they're coming from jails, they're coming from... He can't thoughtfully engage with even his own policy stances, much less be confronted repeatedly about them, whereas Harris can do it, and Harris isn't going to be posting on social media 15 posts about how the interviewer was so unfair. Whitaker, you're so terrible. No, she won't do that because she's an adult. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Support the show by clicking that join button below, which is our members only bonus show. It's so great.